Good evening and welcome. I am Vivian Oden, Vice President for Equity and Inclusion at the Hampton Roads Community Foundation. Thank you for joining us to celebrate Black philanthropy and its power to make Hampton Roads a better and more inclusive place for all. 2021 marks the fourth consecutive year that the Community Foundation has hosted the Black Philanthropy Month celebration. Tonight, we are happy to report the results of the Giving Black Hampton Roads research project. In addition, you would have an opportunity to interact with one another after the presentation to discuss the findings of the report and share your philanthropy stories through our interactive platform. For the last year, in partnership with New England Blacks in Philanthropy, we have been focused on engaging Black voices in philanthropy in Hampton Roads. Together, we have learned more about the history of Black donors who joined forces to support their own neighborhoods, schools, nonprofit organizations, and churches. We heard about many unique attributes of Black philanthropy, such as the collective giving power, efforts to achieve transformational change, and the unwavering determination of the Black community to provide a better life for their families. Through Giving Black Hampton Roads, we are further demonstrating our continued commitment to racial equity. We are thankful to have worked with an amazing advisory council of Black community leaders throughout the process. We are also appreciative of the support from W.K. Kellogg Foundation, as well as your participation in our survey and involvement in interviews and focus groups. I want to also acknowledge our board of directors who are tuning in. We have several city and state elected officials joining us tonight. If you are tuning in on social media, we would love to see your pictures, comments, and your philanthropy stories during the event. Make sure you use the hashtag GivingBlack757. Again, that's hashtag GivingBlack757. At this time, we will hear remarks from our Giving Black Hampton Roads sponsor, Cicely Moore with W.K. Kellogg Foundation, followed by our moderator, Jay Lang, the station manager of Hampton University's Smooth 88.1 WHOV. Joining us now, Cicely Moore.
Thank you, Vivian, and good evening to all. It really is an honor to be with you today. As Vivian shared, my name is Cicely Moore, and I'm the program officer for the Office of the President at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Here at the foundation, I lead our catalyzing community giving cohort of partners that are building philanthropy for and by communities of color across the US, Mexico, and Haiti. I want to again thank Vivian and all at the Hampton Roads Community Foundation, as well as Bithiah Carter and all those at New England Blacks in Philanthropy, and the many community partners who I know participated in leading this courageous work to bring to light the legacy of Black philanthropy in Giving Black Hampton Roads. There is power in collective giving, and the work that New England Blacks in Philanthropy has done to acknowledge the legacy and present day attributes of Giving Black is important because it challenges us to re-examine the criteria of who we see and who is celebrated as philanthropists. And when we own this narrative, we become and continue to be agents of our own change and capture the richness of our volunteerism, collective action, and financial contributions that benefit not only our community, but all. For the past 2 decades, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation has been supporting communities to grow locally driven philanthropy for and by communities of color, and to support the kind of impact you will hear about today through the report. Now, more than ever, against a global pandemic and uprisings for racial justice, communities are utilizing the power of collective giving and coalition building to advocate and build power for communities of color. Our outcomes, informed by our history and the actions that we take today, depend entirely on whether we can drive more people to act and drive the people who are already acting to do more strategically. And thanks to the investments of the Hampton Roads Community Foundation and New England Blacks in Philanthropy to capture the insights into Giving Black, more people will have the tools and opportunity to continue the legacy of Black philanthropy. Congratulations, and thank you to all who were part of creating this amazing report. Thank you, and please enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Vivian and Cicely, for that welcome and opening remarks. And thank you for tuning in tonight. As mentioned, I'm Jay Lang, and I'm your moderator for the evening. And with the lack of Black researchers and underrepresentation of Blacks in philanthropic conversations, Giving Black Hampton Roads provides research on the current and future Black giving landscape to inform conversations on Black philanthropy. I had an opportunity to participate in this research project, and just like you, I'm eager to hear the results because I have a foundation, H.J. Lang Foundation, and there's a lot about Black philanthropy that I wasn't really aware of, and I had a lot of questions. And we want to spark healthy dialogue on social media, so we encourage you to leave live tweets of your thoughts or any important takeaways shared this evening using the hashtag GivingBlack757. That's hashtag GivingBlack757. Tonight, we have Bithiah Carter, president of New England Blacks in Philanthropy. And Ms. Carter has a passion for philanthropy and fueling the 21st century mindset by shining a light on racial assets and how they can be leveraged to improve education, workforce, and economic resources in our communities. Her experience is rooted in both Wall Street finance and community nonprofit and foundation leadership. We also have Dr. Kimberly James, Chief Research Officer for New England Blacks in Philanthropy. Dr. James is a seasoned researcher, educator, and evaluator with over 15 years of experience. She's a former evaluation officer for the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and a former assistant professor in political science at Georgia State University. Welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Ms. Carter, tell me more about Giving Black and how did it get started?
I'd be delighted. You know, this is kind of work of passion for me. Too often the conversation about our communities focuses on our deficits and not our assets. And although we have talked for many years about changing that narrative, we feel that this work is really, really about that. And as we sought to change the narrative, one of the things we realized, we didn't have a lot of research, particularly on our philanthropic giving. So we wanted to know, where are we giving? Who are we giving to? Why are we giving? And as we sought out this information, we realized it didn't exist. There were a lot of anecdotal stories about our giving. There's a lot of history with our giving, but we found that there was nothing there that just kind of pulled it all together. So as we looked at this work, we decided we needed to not only focus on our assets and our deficits and change the narrative, but also we needed to figure out how do we bring various stakeholders together, whether it is nonprofit leaders, whether it's people who are giving philanthropically, whether it's leaders and scholars, how do we bring them all together to shape the story of us? So what Giving Black is an equitable philanthropic platform that supports and tells the story of our community, by our community, for the result of our legacy and ensuring that we have a brighter future.
Well, why is the Giving Black Research Project necessary for our communities?
You know, it's needed for a number of reasons. Philanthropy is the conversation of the day. We talk about it everywhere, but yet and still, we're not often included in that conversation. Our work is seen as giving, but not at that level of philanthropy. And as if philanthropy brings forth a different sort of connotation of giving. We also felt that in our community, we needed to find a way that we're providing a place for stakeholders, policy leaders, philanthropic leaders, foundation leaders, scholars, to convene and collaborate and think through what do we know, but also what do we want in our communities? And rarely have we been asked, what do we want to see? So we wanted to use this as an opportunity to do that and provide an equitable platform to support the needs of our community, but also resulting in a better space and place for all of us. So this is not just about diversity or becoming more inclusive, but this is telling the story of us, by us, and for us.
And Dr. James, I want to bring you into the conversation to discuss specifically Giving Black Hampton Roads. Now, as the Chief Research Officer on this project, give us an overview of who participated. How did you collect the data and engage participants?
Yes, we had great participation among Hampton Roads residents. We engaged over 600 individuals over a 16-month period in either focus groups, interviews, and an online survey. In the survey, we had over 300 participants who responded to our survey, which is absolutely a good number. And in the survey, most of the respondents were Black women, but not just any Black women. These Black women were very well educated. Over 84% had either a bachelor's, master's, or advanced degree. They are also employed. Only 1% reported being unemployed, and this is during the height of COVID. They were also longtime residents, and that's very unusual in surveys. Usually surveys have a shorter length of time for respondents. The average length of time that respondents lived in the Hampton Roads region was 10 years. And so that meant they had a wealth of knowledge to share about the Hampton Roads region.
Now, there are myths that Black people don't give and that a philanthropist is a rich white man. Now, what was the giving level of respondents?
The giving level was also something that Hampton Roads region should be proud. During the height of COVID, over 98% of survey respondents reported giving, 98%. And of those, when we looked at all together and did an estimate of the total amount of giving during that 12-month period among donor respondents, the amount was $2 million among slightly over 300 participants. Really, it just speaks to just this high level of generosity among Hampton Roads residents. Now, in terms of the average donation, it tended to be $1,000 or less, but there were 30% of the donor respondents who gave at least $5,000 or more over a 12-month period.
You know, that's remarkable, because when we think about that number, $5,000, and Kimberly and I talked about that, that's twice the average giving within the United States, which is around $2,500. So we're thinking about people that are giving during a time like we have seen no other. Right? We're thinking about people who are stretched, probably with their community, their families and the like, but they're still giving from their heart. And I thought that was quite amazing, that $5,000 number, particularly because it is twice the average. We know anecdotally we give more than most, but we rarely have a number to really put and really show what that giving looks like. And so Hampton Roads, hats off.
So what's unique and or different about Black giving in Hampton Roads?
So I think, Hampton Roads has offered a sort of history of giving that's really been untold. It's like, this history of being there from the 1600s. 1619 is a project that everyone has heard about, and we've heard about the atrocity of slavery and what happened with us as enslaved people, but we haven't heard about the free people during that time, the communities that were set up during that time. We rarely talk about not only free communities, but the entrepreneurship that was going on and philanthropy of both time, talent, treasure, ties, and testimony that was going on in that time. So I think that there was a legacy, if you will, a foundation that felt a little different, because to be honest, this is the genesis of giving in America. This is where Giving Black started, in Hampton Roads. And as we looked at many of the stories or the history of this area, whether it was like Samuel Harris, who in the 1800s created cheap stores, was a millionaire. He actually helped to save the College of William and Mary. We found information and stories there that we had not seen in other places just because of this historical foundation of Hampton Roads and what it meant and what it continues to mean to the growth of the United States.
Now, Ms. Carter, as a part of part of Giving Black Hampton Roads, you held interviews and focus groups, including an interview with me, and you caused me to dig deep and think about things I hadn't even thought about. What did you hear in your interviews with Black donors, and what inspired you the most about Hampton Roads Black Giving?
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot we heard. But one of the things that kind of stick with me, that for the most part, this was the first time people were asked about their giving, right? This is the first time that people had to kind of, like, our conversations, that people had to sit back and really think about who's curating what I know and how do I know what I know? I think the thing that really truly inspired me was this strong, strong, strong sense of community. And I think probably it is from that foundation, that legacy of freed Black people, enslaved Black people, all moving the needle and continuing to move the needle in the community. One part of our report, we call it the Long Revolutionary War to Freedom, because it just didn't stop in the 1700s, but it continued, that people kept pushing and pushing and pushing. I think there's this shared mission there between even our work and with Visionaries from Change and for the Community Foundation itself. I would also say that I found that within the research itself, the idea that people are thinking about wealth planning right now, millennials, Zs are even thinking about wealth planning. That is not something I really expected to see, but I was really inspired by that and inspired to think about what tools, what's missing, because if people are thinking about it, how do we help them along their journey? And I think it, again, the space and place of Hampton Roads being that cradle of Black giving was truly an inspiration in uncovering all the ways that this has happened over the past 400 years.
So, Ms. Carter, briefly tell me what surprised you the most about Black giving at Hampton Roads.
I think one of the things that kind of surprised me was the fact that philanthropy has been there a long time, hidden in plain sight. I think that also when I thought about other surprising issues, the diversity of volunteerism. Although many of the donors that took the survey, or that even that we talked to, gave to Black organizations, they didn't give to Black organizations alone. And that was surprising. When we have a little metric that we have used to really look at Black philanthropy across a number of cities, who are our cornerstone givers, the people who give to betterment of society, who are the kinship givers, people who give to the NAACP, the Urban League, that give to Black-led organization or Black-centered organization, and then faith-based givers, what we call sanctified givers. These are people who give to the church. What I saw in Hampton Roads that was really surprising, that there was more of a blend of people giving across those areas. Also, I noticed that, again, going back to volunteerism, the widest group of people volunteered across a plethora of organizations, not just Black-led organization. And I think that speaks to the leadership maybe in Hampton Roads. I think it also can speak to, again, this proclivity, so to speak, of looking beyond yourself and really moving the needle, not just for your community, but all communities.
Dr. James, what inspired you most about Hampton Roads Black Giving?
There are so many inspirational moments in Hampton Roads history, it was difficult to choose. Overall, Hampton Roads Black residents showed this fearlessness, resilience, willing to help other Black individuals have better lives, even at great risk to their own well-being. You had the enslaved who would give food, housing to other individuals. You had free Black people who would risk their own free status to help their fellow Black individuals, reach freedom. It seems in Hampton Roads, no matter what was thrown at the Black community responded. So after the Civil War, when there wasn't as much help in terms of building Black communities and building Black schools and for Black communities, Black people built their own. After when segregation was, instituted at the turn of the century, Black people said, okay, and so they raised their own money. You had Black people who owned land, who donated land for schools, and people held, lunches to raise money to send Black children to school. And so throughout the history, there's this sense of just Black people giving back, helping other Black people live better lives.
What surprised you the most about Black Giving in Hampton Roads?
There are many surprises, and like Bithiah, I encourage people to read the report, but there are two I want to share as teasers. First, Black donors who made the most money were the least optimistic about Hampton Roads being a place of economic opportunity. And so I want to repeat that because it's important. So Black donors who made over $250,000, they were less optimistic about Hampton Roads being a place of opportunity than Black donors who made less than $40,000. That was surprising to me. I think the second surprise I'll share is that in terms of volunteering, 75%, so 3/4 of Black donors reported volunteering in Black and non-Black communities. And that may be a surprise to people in Hampton Roads, because people tend to think that, people only volunteer within their own ethnic or racial group. And that's not true of this group of Black donors who took the survey. They volunteered across different communities.
Mrs. Carter, now that the Giving Black Hampton Roads study is complete, is there anything you wished you had asked Hampton Roads Black donors that you did not, and why?
That's a good question, because we didn't dig that much into gender. And I think that's one of the areas I would have liked to have more information. For example, when we think of philanthropy, just like you said earlier, we think of rich white men, right? But we tend to think of men when we think of philanthropy, particularly large gifts. And as Kimberly mentioned, most of the donors were women, well-educated women, but still women. So I think I would like to understand that component a little bit better. Like Order of the Tents, there were many secret societies that were created along the history of Hampton Roads. I would have liked to better understand where they sit today and their philanthropic giving. And then I think lastly, one of the things that Kimberly and I both talked about as we were putting this report together, why did more Black dollars go to social justice, or particularly our traditional social and racial justice organizations? What's going on, particularly when our rights are under attack? So, what's underneath that? We saw it in the survey. We talked a little bit about that, but once we put the information together, I think there's more to suss out, so to speak, to better understand what's going on there.
What are the next steps, and what are your recommendations for Hampton Roads? What's the first thing that you would suggest we do?
What do you think about that, Kimberly?
Yes, I think the first thing is really to revisit Hampton Roads' rich history and legacy of Black giving. I know that Hampton Roads recently celebrated the events around 1619. And I think that revisiting that in terms of a Black giving frame to elevate the remarkable accomplishments and achievements of people who gave and how they gave is a good start. You can't help but being both overwhelmed and inspired by just the generosity of Black individuals in the region.
I have to agree with Kimberly. I think that, we would love to revisit this. We had about 18 months to pull this together to kind of give you part one. But also, I think with looking at that history, I think there's an opportunity for us to really think strategically about some of the things that came out of the survey, particularly when people talked about economic well-being. And really, how do we use this as an opportunity to bring forth people who are thinking about economic well-being, but also where are we giving? And if the giving is not matching what the outcomes that we want to see. How do we redirect those dollars? How do we develop and coalesce around an agenda that values and elevate, again, as Kimberly said, Black philanthropic giving? And how do we build on the inroads in this community by celebrating the nonprofits, particularly Black-led nonprofits? What we heard was Black people want to give to the Black-led nonprofits, but they didn't feel like they had access to them. Almost 50% said, I don't feel like I have the information I need. So we need tools and resources to increase that and increase intergenerational giving. We spoke to some amazing young people in Hampton Roads that we need to really increase that intergenerational conversation, because even among Zs, the younger people, 50% are thinking about wealth management and planning for the future. So if we know that is true, we know someone's going to get those dollars. They should remain in our community. They should stay in our community. We have talked a lot about the velocity of dollars in our community. This is actually a wonderful time to act on that with our philanthropic giving.
Well, Ms. Carter and Dr. James, it's been a pleasure. Your committed enthusiasm is incredible. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing the results of the Giving Black Hampton Roads Research Project.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
At this time, we're going to open the conversation up for a question and answer period. Now, these questions were previously submitted by our registrants, so thank you for your participation. And remember to share your thoughts and comments on social media using the hashtag GivingBlack757. Now, the first question is from Kenzia Hendricks from Norfolk. She asks, how do we encourage Generation Z to make it a culture to give Black?
You know, that's a great question. And it's not just how do we encourage, but how do we receive as well? So we have to think about this as cultivation, and we have to do a better job of cultivating our generation to be for us. You know, we are thinking about this now. I think the twin pandemic, both social and racial, undoing of the United States have really pushed this issue to the forefront. We also know from the study, 50% of millennials and Zs, they're thinking about wealth and wealth building and management. How do we make sure that this wealth building, this wealth management plan includes the community? And so how do we think about not only their small gifts today, how do we make that into big investments for tomorrow? How? We have to get people involved. We have to hear their voice. We have to make sure that we're not losing their dollars to our white counterparts who are bringing them along in the planning, in the doing, in the practice of their philanthropic giving. We have to cultivate and grab our own and ensure that, again, our dollars stay in our community, but they have to be deployed right. People are looking to be engaged, but just not in the way that our grandparents were.
All right, the next question is from Jamila Shipman from the Peninsula. And she asks, how can African Americans share more of the philanthropy that happens in our community?
It's a great question. First, as we explained during the report, that there's a lot of great philanthropy happening in the Hampton Road region. I think one thing that African Americans can do is to share it through social media. We know from research that particularly our younger Black donors, they're moved by stories of impact, of stories of people helping people through social media. During the protests for racial justice and against police brutality, they were instrumental in getting other younger donors to participate in social actions, into giving. And so social media is a great means to engage younger donors and to share philanthropy.
I agree with Kimberly. And I think that we also have to think of this as, you know, so much of our giving has been quiet. It has been anonymous. It has been like, I don't want to be boastful. Those are some of the things that we've heard. We've got to celebrate this. We've got to celebrate who we are. We have to celebrate the assets of our community. And if no one wants to tell our stories, we have to tell our stories. That's why I'm so happy we're here with you today, because you tell the stories of community. You tell the story of what's going well with us. We have to do a better job of not waiting for other people to do it. We can share it ourselves.
Next question from L. Battle from Portsmouth. What is the best way to engage the Black community at various income levels through a public campaign and/or individually? What should we do?
You know, I think we have to look at this in the 5 T's. Philanthropy isn't just one T of treasure, but it's time, talent, treasure, ties, and testimony. And sometimes, even though we really emphasize the treasure part, it's really those ties and how people use their talents, how people use their time. And that's why we ask people, where are you volunteering? Who's benefiting from that volunteerism? We need to figure out not just how to engage, but what is the outcome of that engagement as well? How do we help shepherd people into the places and spaces that they want to be? How do we get them personally involved, that they're testifying to the fact that I'm a part of this? I'm gonna bring my ties of my community here. But in order to do that, people want to see outcome. What changed because I'm here? It's not just exciting that we're giving collectively, but what is that collective movement that we're bringing forth? Wouldn't you say that's true, Kimberly?
Yes, and I would like to add that Black donors in Hampton Roads, it's not a monolithic community. They're different regions. Sometimes it feels like it's, 10, 11, 12 different regions within Hampton Roads. And so we have to pay attention to that. And also in terms of income levels, we know from our research that depending on your income level, you're interested in different aspects about wealth management. For example, those are lower income Black donors, they're more interested in learning about how do I create and develop a family philanthropic plan to help manage my wealth. That's different from higher income Black donors. And so as we go about engagement, we have to think about the different levels of income and what appeals to each level.
I think Kimberly's right. We got to think about the grass top as well as the grassroots, because all of that brings together a more fertile community.
Okay, the final question is, if you had an early headline, a song, movie, or TV show to describe Black giving in Hampton Roads, what would it be?
What would it be? I think for me, thinking about the plethora of giving that happened during the past 400 years, I would say it would have to be hidden in plain sight. We've been here, we've been giving, we have done a lot, right? We have rebuilt the city after the Civil War. We had freed Blacks. We had societies that were giving, yet and still somehow in plain sight, we're there doing it all, but it wasn't always seen. And so I think this report is highlighting all that we, a piece of that whole legacy of giving and that legacy of Black philanthropy that has been hidden in plain sight for all of us to see, that really we have all benefited from, as this is truly the genesis of Black philanthropy.
And for me, I'm going to use something that Bithiah said earlier, which was what's going on. And so What's Going On is one of my favorite songs by Marvin Gaye. And I think it's really appropriate for Hampton Roads. When we looked at the research, Hampton Roads survey respondents identified economic stability and wealth building as the #1 issue that Black people needed to address. And this was true no matter your age, income, etc. Yet when we looked at their actual giving levels, issues around economic stability and wealth building ranked 5th or 6th. Similar thing happened with racism and white supremacy. Black Hampton Roads residents, they identified this as the second most important issue that needed to be addressed. Yet, as Bithiah pointed out, in our survey showed that, 40% of Black people during this past year, when there was more attention on social justice and racial justice, just did not give to traditional social and racial justice organizations like the NAACP, which we term cornerstone organizations. So we were curious and thinking about, what explains that. And so going back to your earlier question, Jay, if we had a chance to dig deeper, it would be on that issue. Like, what's going on here? Are you giving your money to other organizations? And certainly our survey did show that some of that is occurring, but why at the height of racial social justice issues did we not see higher giving levels to these cornerstone organizations?
Thank you again for submitting your questions and comments. They certainly helped to spur thoughtful dialogue. And thank you again, Ms. Carter and Dr. James, for sharing the results of the Giving Black Hampton Roads research project with us this evening. And thank you to the Hampton Roads Community Foundation for sponsoring this event and creating a platform that provides an opportunity for meaningful and transformative conversations. Thank you to our partner, W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Through this discussion, we hope that we've helped dispel some of the common myths surrounding Black giving and trust that everyone gain insight on the lasting impact of Black donors in the Hampton Roads community. It's been a pleasure serving as your moderator for the evening. Thank you again to the Community Foundation for this opportunity. And personally, I believe in order to be blessed, you have to be a blessing. So keep giving. At this time, I'll turn the program over to Dr. Deborah DeCroce, President and CEO at the Hampton Roads Community Foundation.
Wow, what an insightful and inspirational conversation. I'm Debbie DeCroce, President and CEO of the Hampton Roads Community Foundation. Our board of directors, my colleagues, and I are so pleased that you've joined us this evening for our 4th annual Black Philanthropy Month celebration. Thanks as well for your questions, comments, and continued engagement on social media. In 2017, the Hampton Roads Community Foundation adopted a 5-year strategic roadmap that included as one of its 6 priorities, helping to create a more inclusive and equitable community for the region. We launched this journey with initial actions designed both to raise the consciousness of the region on the urgency of this work and to provide a path for our own internal reckonings as a philanthropic organization. Indeed, the journey to date has been as complex and soul-searching as the subject matter itself. Among those initial actions was to shine a spotlight on Black giving, in part by hosting the first ever study, and what a story this study has told. We've learned about the power of Black philanthropy in Hampton Roads and its enduring impact on the region and her people. We've learned about Black donors and their steadfast giving in the muck of the pandemic and long, long before it. We've heard about their strong sense of community, their volunteerism across a variety of community organizations and causes, their fundamental belief in the importance of economic stability and wealth building. Indeed, this report confirms what many of us already knew, that Black philanthropy in Hampton Roads is flourishing. And it's up to us, all of us, to be intentional and equitable in our engagement with the Black community. The Community Foundation's prayerful hope is that together we'll use the report as a new tool in the toolbox for our collective journey toward a thriving community with opportunity for everyone. You can access the full report on the Foundation's website tomorrow at www.hamptonroadscf.org. Thank you, Bithiah Carter and Dr. Kimberly James, for helping us to tell the story of Black philanthropists in Hampton Roads. We simply couldn't have done it without you. Thanks as well to our sponsor, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, for supporting this important research project, our moderator, Jay Lang, for leading tonight's discussion and participating in this project, and the many Black voices who graciously shared their stories with us. And thanks again to all of you for tuning in to this evening's presentation. If you are joining us from our interactive platform, you can engage with the presenters and other participants through 14 tables focused on a variety of Black philanthropy topics. These tables are located on your screen. For example, if you are interested in learning more about the collective giving power of Black donors through giving circles like the Foundation's Visionaries for Change, you can stop by the virtual Visionaries for Change table. As an aside, you can also visit their website at www.visionariesforchange.org. You can also engage directly with Bithiah Carter at the virtual New England Blacks in Philanthropy table. There are as well 12 other tables, each of which is marked with a number and topic area. Just double click on an empty seat to join a table. A seat is empty if a photo or letter is not visible. Each table allows for 8 people. If all of the tables are full on the first level, use the elevator dial on the left side of your screen to access the second level. Of course, we encourage you to turn on your camera during the conversation. Each table will have a table guide to lead the discussion. All of us at the Foundation are sure you'll enjoy the conversations, and we encourage you to share your philanthropy stories at #GivingBlack757. Again, many thanks for tuning in. If you are joining us from our interactive platform, you will now be placed into the interactive view. Have a great evening.